Wait, this is connected to everything. You can't take that. Okay. I know.
This is keep me away from the potatoes. So
You're after the coins, $100. You're out of luck. I don't have it at all.
Okay, hold on. This is not. That's why you're looking. Okay. Okay. Are you good, Paul?
Yeah, I'll put it up.
Okay. All right, so we will start the meeting at 6 o'clock. And in your folder, oh, you have it there, the agenda that I have for tonight's work meeting. And I put documents. There we go. Okay. Just so we're clear, in no way, shape, or form do I think we're going to get through everything that is on this agenda. I just put on here everything I know that we need to work on. And when we hit our 8 o'clock time, then whatever we get to is whatever we get to. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is how I envision these. It's on. What I want to talk about is how I envision these work meetings to proceed. That's the first thing I want to talk about. So we can figure out how we want this to go. Since we've never done these before, I thought we should take a little time and talk about how we would envision these meetings proceed. So I have a list of things that these are just things that have come, everything on this list is stuff that has come from Planning Commission. It's been through Planning Commission and is here for us. And I have a list of just things that I want to work on eventually. I had started a list, and if there's anything any of the rest of you want to work on, that anything that you have had issues with that you think we need to change in the code on whatever, just we can add that. I figure everybody can start a list of things that you want to work on, and we'll add them to this list. So I've got several things on the code that I would like to start talking about at town council meetings and things we would potentially change. And I know that Paul does too. And so I just don't know if Jean does and Leroy or Misty, but we'll talk to Misty when she gets here. But that's where I was thinking that we would just start a list of all the different things that we want to work on, and we start at the top, start working our way down, and it's just a rolling list as we add more things that we want to work on. That's how I envision this working. Any questions? No? Okay. So for example, I have things I want to work on that have to do with the highway resort zone. something about, I want to change something in the ordinance has to do with the appeal authority. I'm not gonna go into details yet, just, I was just letting you know, those are the kind of things I'm talking about. So if any of you have things that you also have ideas that you want to work on, then just tell me and we'll add it to this list.
How would you like us to submit that to you?
You can send me by email, you can tell me and I can add it to this list and then I'll just start adding it to this. And I was trying to decide if I wanted it to just be on the agenda, that the rolling thing is on the agenda, or if I start taking these, put these on a list that we just have among ourselves that we could put on like SharePoint. And you can open it up and see what are things that we want to work on, and then you can maybe add something. I'm open to suggestions for how that could work. It's not set in stone.
I like that idea. The only question would be, are we okay to have a shared document, or is that something that's to be made public, or how do we do that?
I don't know. I don't know if that's something that it probably would have to be made public, the list of what we're gonna be working on.
Which is fine. It's-
But actually, some of it would be something we wouldn't even get to for 3 or 4 months, but it's just on the list so that we know that's something we might want to work on. That's kind of what I'm envisioning. So,
For these two, I'm open for whatever's.
okay. Okay, so before we get going with anything that I had on the agenda, Leroy brought us something here that he said he would like to talk to us about. So Leroy.
I've given all of you a sheet, and it's a source of income for fiscal years and 2018 through 2022. And it's itemized by the various areas that we receive income, for example, property tax, fees in lieu, and that's from the vehicle tax, and so forth. And then the second thing I did here, I did an income as a percent of total income. What that does is take each one of those areas and gives a percent of the total income that year. For example, property tax in 2018 was 22.7% of the total income we had that year. And sales and use tax was 44.58% of the total income. So you can see the majority of our income came from those two items. If you go down to fiscal year 2022, you find that property tax amounts to only 9.44% of the total income. And what has really changed is you see sales and use tax dropping from 44% to 29% of income. And the income that's gone up is in transit room tax to 18.8% and resort tax to 31.37%. So if you add those two together, 50% of the income that the town has comes from transit room tax and resort tax. And where before, the majority of our income came from sales tax and property tax. Sales tax went from 44% to 29%, so it decreased also. So the income we have now is coming from the things that some people want to do away with. I just wanted to make sure the public was aware of that. Fiscal year 2023, our budget is for $652,000 in expenses. You'll see that at the bottom of the sheet. In 2018, if some of these short-term rentals weren't added, we would have been, what, $400,000 in the hole. Fiscal year 2022, we had income of $729,000. And in 23, of course, we have budgeted income around $800,000. So we're still showing an excess there of income or margin over our expenses. But I think the public needs, especially the statements that were made at the last meeting we had, the special meeting, when a couple of the public had to say that not everything's about dollars and cents the town brings in. Some of the things we've been able to do paving roads, improving various areas of town. Comes from, does that income? The ability to apply for a new tank comes from the excess income we have had that we've put away. So that we can show the state of Utah that we have the ability to service a grant. And all grants normally, we have to pay for about half of it. And thank you. I just want the public to be aware of this. You know, sometimes we open our mouths and they run before our brains come online or before we do enough research. And so I just want the public to know what's going on and why we can do the things we can do now. For example, trying to help Pocketville Road with some strips there. We wouldn't have been able to do that before if we hadn't had some of this in. Any questions from the council?
Leroy, do we have a breakdown of within that resort tax from who it comes from? So in other words, how much is coming from the motel versus?
No, the state doesn't give us a breakdown. I wish they did. Now, the hotel came online probably in 220, but that was only half. The other half came online in 222.
Yeah, I understand you're asking that, Paul. That is something that we have been recently calling the state about, say, you know, seriously, is there nothing we can do to see who pays what in the tax, so we can figure out what's short-term rental, what's hotel, what's Zion Wildflower,
And
what's Weepy Buffalo, you know, to try to see.
and what's
where-
residential housing?
Yeah, and they just send us a lump sum and there you go, and it's not helpful.
The problem before 2000, or even in 2018, was the only real income source we had was
Property,
property tax. And so, you know, another thing we need to be aware of, property tax comes from the citizens here in town that live here or own property here. Where the majority of our income now is coming from people out of town. They're visiting. And it's not coming from the people here.
My other question, Leroy, when was the last time we had a increase in property taxes?
We just did.
I think he means you mean for the town?
For the town.
No, we get a certain percent and that's it.
Yeah, but we had, when was the last time we had a increase?
I have lived here 13 years and it's never happened while I've lived here.
Okay, so it's been a long time, so we haven't raised it at all, as far as that goes.
We get less, I don't know the exact percent, but we get less than 10% of what you pay in property tax comes to the cities.
And on the resort tax, you had asked me recently, Paul, if we were at 1 or 1.5%,
1%,
and we were at 1.
more.
And so we still have the ability to raise another 0.5% if we want, but because we can go to 1.5.
Yeah, and I haven't looked at the requirements to what you need to, whether we meet the requirements to go the extra 0.5%. I think we do, but I didn't have a look at it.
Okay. I was just wanting people to know that we had looked at that. What, the fact that we were at 1 and the max is 1.5 and something for us to look at. So Misty, we were talking about this thing. That's what we were talking about and you walked it in. And what we had said before you got here, we were on item A on the agenda, which is a discussion of how we want these work meetings to proceed. And we were discussing the fact that the way I did this agenda is just, in no way do I think we're going to get to everything on this list. That's not the plan. It's really just to start a list of everything that eventually we need to look at. And as if everybody has anything, like, you know, how you have talked one time about the short-term rentals, one of the things that you thought would be nice is, a better way to go is, sort of like what they do with Hurricane, with the numbers. And so if that's something that you want us to talk about, we'll just add it to the list. So if there's anything, any of you have stuff that you want us to start talking about, we'll add it to the list. Okay. So to just let everybody know if you have anything you want to add, and I'm open to suggestions of how to run things.
One thing I thought everyone else would miss, you need to get this thing turned in
Oh, the rent.
immediately. That's holding up the
Oh, the
year-end
report.
audit. Yeah,
Okay,
they won't finish the audit until they receive this.
okay. Hold on. Somebody's phone. Oh, I was gonna look for that email from that guy, so I could go ahead and forward it to you for that form. But,
I'll just leave what they me.
so you're just gonna fill out that one?
I'll fill out that one or I'll scan it in and then
And then,
reduce it,
okay, all right. then I will
Word or something.
continue. Okay. Fine. Okay, so, items B and C. On the list here, code enforcement officer and the short-term rental subdivision. Ordinance that I had submitted over to planning commission back in July. At the end of July, very end of July. I want us to talk about those at the December meeting. We had talked about the fact that we can pull the short-term rental moratorium, and I did ask Heath if we could pull the code enforcement officer ordinance from planning commission and pull it over to town council so we can vote on it. And he indicated we need to give one more month for planning commission on the code enforcement officer one, but the short-term rental one we could pull back now. So I just wanted us to talk about it. I just want it to get voted on. If it goes down, it goes down. I just want it to have a vote. That's all. But if it gets denied, it gets denied, but it just needs a vote. And the same thing with the code enforcement officer. We need to discuss the code enforcement officer position. We'd already talked about it some at the town council meetings in October and November, both. And we had gone through the code. If you guys remember, we sat down and we went through every place in the code where we thought that it should be changed to say code enforcement officer that would do what the code enforcement officer would do. And so we need to vote on that ordinance too. So what do you guys have to say on those two? Anybody? Anything?
Still think it's putting the cart ahead of the horse. I think we ought to secure funds, or if that's what council wants to do. If we want to secure funds for a compliance officer, then change the code to match. But I feel like changing the code prior to even having the funds or authorization or even possibly desire the council to hire this individual, I don't think changing codes without that in place is wise.
Well, I can't hire anybody until we have a code that says there's a code enforcement officer. But you've indicated in all of our discussions that you don't want to do code enforcement. So we've got to have.
You got that right?
No, you sent me something today.
I sent you a letter today saying that I'm rescinding that interest, setting down as code enforcement.
I'm sorry. This was today, an email?
No. Deliver out a letter.
Oh, that, I haven't looked at it. I thought that was something else.
That's
Okay.
fine. I'll let you read it and
Okay,
we can talk.
okay,
I'm just of the opinion, I think we ought to start determining if this is what we even want as a town first, before we start making changes to ordinances and leaving ourselves in a blank.
okay.
Or doing it dual. That's a compromise. If we're to say zoning administrator or compliance officer, and then if we decide to go compliance officer, you can remove zoning administrator.
Okay,
That we are not leaving it open for there's no enforcement at all.
okay.
That's just a
Because one of the things I put here for you guys right underneath the agenda, because since this was the first topic for discussion, I put in here a joint resolution that came from the state legislature in 2019, where they were talking about it says this resolution recognizes the vital role that code enforcement officers play in the health, safety, and welfare of our community, recognizes the risks that comes with being a code enforcement officer. And they encourage local municipalities to adopt ordinances and policies to greater facilitate the training and protection of code enforcement officers. And then it goes on, be it resolved, and they go on and talk about the need for municipalities to have a code enforcement officer. So I just printed that for everyone to see.
I have some questions on, down there in, I think it's line 28, 29, we're talking about recent tragic events.
Yeah, I don't know what they were talking about.
I'd be interested in knowing. I think this also is, it doesn't specify the difference, but I think this is more towards sworn code enforcement officers, post-certified, like cops. They're acting as code enforcement. It doesn't say, but it talks about the way that it's talking is suggesting to me that it's talking more about actual officers of the law. Not that that matters. I mean, it's still,
Yeah, I
it's still
don't know.
potentially dangerous. I mean, we have one resident in this town, we gotta have the sheriff there just to check their power. So I think there's good things that we need to always get. I don't know. I'd like to read more about how this came to play.
Okay,
It sounds like somebody got killed or something or shot.
that would be my expectation if that's what that was. Okay, so Leroy,
Penalties, we don't have penalties in the code. They don't,
if we're gonna wait until we have penalties in the code to even go out and try to do code enforcement, we'll be here another year while everybody's just violating the code all over the place.
I thought our prosecuting attorney volunteered to do that for us.
He
He's
did.
working on it. He's working. on it.
I remember when I was in there, that we were told that our ordinances were having teeth to support the violence or the tickets or whatever, we need to have the prosecuting attorney finish before we start.
And we talked,
enforcing.
yes, and we talked about the fact that our ordinances needed to be updated for that,
Right.
starting in like June of last year. And here we are in January and we're still talking about the same thing.
We still have the power to direct the city attorney to file an injunction and enforce the provisions of the ordinances. Anyway, so there is some enforcement provisions. And I think the code enforcement, even though we're still working on the penalties, still can do a lot of good and maybe getting self-compliance and prevent us from going to that injunction stage. So I don't think we hold up on the code enforcement officer. We got code violations all over the place. We need to start enforcing the code.
And we've got so many complaints from
And-
citizens.
Okay.
And I understand, I understand.
That we have a process, we received 3 complaints in 1 year, in my attention, so that's not massive.
That's because nobody wants to complain anymore because nobody's getting any work done on it.
That's not,
I mean, I hear complaints from a lot of individuals that say we have problems. Be that as it may, we need code enforcement, whether I don't mind doing a process and then all at once, as you suggested, that's fine. But don't hold off and say we need to do this before we do this other thing. If we do that, then let's get it scheduled down and say we're gonna do this by this date and this by this.
sure, I agree. I can only go off of what our previous prosecuting attorney said, and she would flat out tell me, you can prosecute, I can prosecute that, but you're gonna lose. So does the town want to spend very large amounts of money trying to prosecute things that we lose on because we don't have it written in our ordinance? This has been a problem since the beginning.
And I don't know.
James is gonna fix that. which is what I'm understanding, you started working, we've got an animal at large, we're gonna start looking at, we've got some other things. Then I would suggest we do that, and then I would be happy to take marching orders from the mayor saying, all right, I want you to go out and enforce these specific ordinances.
And
You
I-
can't do it all at once.
Yeah.
You can't shop that.
And I don't know about I don't know about the previous prosecutor, but I can tell you that some prosecutors will not enforce things because they just don't want to go to court and enforce an item. And sometimes unless they got a good case to win, and the standard is in the interest of justice, not whether you can win or lose, but in the interest of justice. And sometimes you have to go to court and take that chance. And so I don't know what part of the spectrum she fell on. And so I still haven't, because I got sick, I still haven't met with the new prosecutor, but that's still on my list to figure out where he stands.
Is anyone putting pressure on the prosecutor, or are they just asking him to do it and he just hasn't done it because no one's saying, hey, we need this done right now?
Does he have a time frame?
The clerk's working with him on some of it.
Do you want me to give an update?
Yes, please.
Oh, so I talked to James Weeks today, actually. He sent me over yesterday, well, I haven't talked, but yesterday he sent me over a massive list of what is acceptable as far as punishment goes on code. That if they were to go to court, this is what the court would prosecute them for. So let's say you have operating a business without a business license, and we say we want $2,000 fine for your first offense. Well, the court's like to laugh at us and say that's not reasonable, the state code says this. So he said that we are gonna go through our ordinances, and we wanna pull out 10 ordinances or something like that. We can actually look in this master code that he sent us and put what is the reasonable infraction or misdemeanor that would go on those ordinances if they were broken. So we had a code enforcement officer or somebody, whoever is enforcing the code, essentially what they would do is our ordinance would state, you know, you're operating a business without a business license. We go and make the business aware you've got 2 weeks to come in and get your business license. Give them their time frame, whatever you want to get. And if they don't comply with that, then we call an officer out who pretty much written our case to a police officer. He comes out and cites them. So that kind of gets turned over to our prosecuting attorney and he takes them to court. That's the rundown.
Now,
But
questions.
Huh?
When we talked, you had said that some of the stuff that we were already trying to enforce. is-
Yeah, so right now, for instance, I talked to him about somebody who is red tag and they're just continuing to build. What can we do? And he says it's a civil case. No one can do anything until we have something on our code that says what the infraction or misdemeanor is. We need to state, if you break this, this is your penalty. It's like a law, you know, if you break it, your penalty, this is what it is. You're speeding 5 over, you're gonna get this, whatever it is. Everything has the penalty to it. We need to put a penalty, and he gave me the master book on the bottom of our ordinances. Therefore, they can get cited, they can get ticketed by the officer, and our prosecuting attorney can go prosecute them.
Now, this has been my rub since day one, is that you're giving a job, you're requiring a duty, and then there's no way to do the job. So
Right, but right now, everything is a civil suit, because
So here's
there's
my question.
no way to. There's no way for us to, or sorry, for the police officer to cite them because there's not an infraction on our ordinance.
Is there any reason though that we couldn't, as a council, meet with, have James Weeks come here and help us put that together in one evening? It's gotta be simple.
Yeah, he
It doesn't
actually,
have to go through land.
this
use.
is what he said, that's what he said. Master code, because he's like, Crystal, all I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna type in the search bar, you know, animal at large, or operating a business without a business license, and it'll pop up what the penalty is going to be if they were to go to court. This is what the state code is saying, and this is what the court would say, this is reasonable.
Okay, what were you about to say?
I was gonna say, it's easy to do that enforcement provision. And you can do it two ways. One is to do the way our prosecuting attorney says, and then create separate penalties for each offense. Or if you want to do a kind of catch-all at the beginning that say, any violation of any of these ordinances is such and such penalty, and that could be federal until you amend everything. You could go one of two ways.
Well,
or
and
both ways.
he suggested that, you know, pick out 5, 10, 15, I don't care, how many ordinances that we're having a lot of trouble with right now. And get those ordinances.
Crystal, if you send me that, I will drop the ordinance.
Well, we don't have to, we just have to add that section onto it.
Send me that information and I'll drop it.
He said just to pick them up, whatever we're having issues with now, get those ones so we can start enforcing those, work on the others, do the next set of 10 or whatever. So eventually all of our ordinances will have
Okay,
the proper infractions.
I think it would still be good to have him come, whether we.
And
have
he's
him or
willing
not.
to, he's been super great, I talk to him all the time, he's a great attorney, he's very proactive in our town. He's very, answers the phone, answers the email, I mean, he's a great attorney, but, and he's willing to take anybody to court, they wanna go to court, they can take them to court.
We just learned from working with Ms. Beckstrom, there's a series of things that have to be done before you can take something to court, otherwise you screw up your whole case, so. I think it would be good to have him here to say, okay, this needs to go on the bottom of the ordinance, and then this is the actions that you take. For example, with a business license, let's say we have, I don't know, some thing like maybe a short-term rental that's operating illegal, I know that doesn't happen in town.
oh,
Now, let's say that that's happening, we would need from him, okay, these are the steps you have to take to make the case stick, or otherwise you what, and I understand what Paul's saying, yeah, you can send letters. You can say stuff and try to enforce, but I'm thinking about one particular individual, I think we sent 11 letters to them telling them cease and desist, but we couldn't do anything beyond that. So.
Hey,
we'll
but
make sure
once they
we
get
have
that
the
ticket
process.
though, from the
Right.
police officers, the sheriff's department, they get a ticket. And either they they pay that ticket, or 2, then, I mean, if it's just an infraction, they're gonna just pay their $1,000 fine or whatever it is, or 2, they're gonna end up in front of the judge. The judge is gonna say, well, you broke the law, you gotta pay the fine, and here's this, and they're gonna get it on their record. No one wants it on their record.
I guess what I'm saying though is that. Using that same example, state laws protect certain things with SCRs. If you go about it the wrong way and cite them, you're spending money to take them to court that you're gonna lose. So getting it itemized out, these are the steps that have to be taken in this particular, that's important. That's where I'd like to be able to talk with James and say, okay, and that's what's the next thing?
I mean, we can't have everybody there, it's foreign, but maybe 2 at a time or something like that. We can-
I was gonna say, you can't bring to the work
You
meeting.
can have work meeting on it. You can set up the meeting and just advertise it and then.
I like Paul's idea, if we give him those infractions, let him write the ordinance, and then whatever you've written, give 2 weeks, and let Weeks review it, and if he approves it, then let's bring it to the council and vote on it.
I'm all right with that.
It's not rather if he's gonna approve it or not, he's just saying the list that he gave me is what, if they were gonna go to court, and he was gonna prosecute them, this is what they're gonna prosecute.
Okay, just send it to Paul
Send it
and
to
we'll.
me, and then I will communicate with him and make sure that he's all right with that and can enforce that in his daily work. So he can point out any problems in my drafting that says, no, I think we have this problem because of this in Utah law, we have
Yeah,
problems
and
with
he
this
said,
because of this judge.
yeah, for sure, he said he's willing to look at our ordinances, he's willing to do whatever we need him to do, so.
Yeah, when he sent this one that is at the very last page in everybody's list of documents, is this one about animals running at large. When I wrote back to him, when he sent this proposed code for Virgin, and then we can compare it with the county code. I wrote back and told him any suggestions he has about any of others of our code, I would appreciate it.
Is this just to the council? This letter?
Yeah, I have not sent that to anybody. You guys are the first
We
people
just
I've sent.
saw the top has a citizen's name on there too.
Oh, yeah, so it's just us. We have not I've not given a copy.
Yeah,
to
we talked about this the other day in our weekly meeting about the animals at large and trying to weed out of the things we're missing. I think that's what we gotta be doing, bringing it up and talking about what we need to do to. What's best. And it
So,
should be-
yeah, when we get ready to talk about this and have it public, I'll block that out. So the person's name doesn't show. Okay. Okay, so you've got there, Crystal, what we're gonna do with this one? Okay. All right. Next on the agenda, I don't expect us to talk about this one very long. This one where I have about the Fort Terminal subdivision, I put the word moratorium on here, but that's really not a moratorium. What this proposed code is, this is the one that I sent to planning commission back in, at the end of July about removing the section from the town code that allows subdivisions. Not any other thing like the residential hosting, that is untouched. This purely has to do with subdivisions that are short-term rentals. So, time's running, it needs to have a vote because the time is running. And, as I said, I want to put this on the agenda for us to vote on next week. I do not. It can go down, it can pass. Whatever happens, I just want it to have a vote. Because it's been languishing now for, almost, not quite, but almost 6 months.
Cameron, where are you on that? I know you've been working on this already.
So, when Kent and the mayor brought this to us, we thought it was September. Well, I guess it was August, came before us in August meeting. We had assigned Kent and Bronwyn to continue working on this ordinance. They had not made progress, and last meeting, Bronwyn said she had a bunch done on it, but she was having computer trouble with the meeting. Her whole computer cracked, the OS, the operating system just failed on her Chromebook. So she didn't have that information to go over last, but this would be a start of a new ordinance as this one has been pulled with.
There's only 180 days from the time something is submitted for it to be voted on.
Yeah, I realize that's the law, but I still have the same feeling I had last time. I don't think we should be taking things away from planning and zoning when they're. Because then we're just sidestepping them, and we shouldn't do that. That's not the right thing to do.
I agree, but it's also not the right thing to do for it to languish for 6 months. But in any event, as I said, it can be voted down. I just wanted to have a vote. Instead of the 180 days just expiring, I just wanted to have a vote before the 180 days ends. It can be denied. I don't care. I want it to have a vote.
I know it doesn't seem like it, but I'm actually sensitive to where you're coming from, where you look at these. I would like to see on our next work agenda, what we originally talked about, if we wanted to put a moratorium, like immediately, on any new 5 acre or larger subdivision, excluding those that have started their process. So that we could look at writing or having the planning and zoning commission actually write an ordinance and spend some time on it, gives them 6 months to put it together. I am all for that. Just so that you know, I mean, I think that this needs to go away because I think it's too broad. It also, in chapter 60, there's a lot of stuff that has to do with regulation of short-term rentals, like rules on what we do if there's complaints, and all that would go away, and then there's nothing. I'd like to see this go away, but I would like to see it, if for your sake, because I know that's important to you, I would be fine to say, we put a moratorium on anything new coming in. So we have time for the planning and zoning to actually vet it and make a nice thing to bring to this, so we can all that. And maybe even a work meeting with the planning and zoning to address it as a single body. I'm open to that. So those are my thoughts on it.
Okay. Paul, you look like you wanted to say something. or
No,
you're
I was
thinking-
just thinking about what Gene said, and I was trying to figure out a way that we can amend the existing ordinance that was submitted to me, what Gene is saying. That was my look, just trying to figure out the process.
So you're talking section, looking at this ordinance, with what you were just saying, section D is the section that starts talking about the application, the fees, what you need, and I get your point about the fact that this is where it's regulated. So I would agree with you that that part, would need to stay where the part above is potentially problematic. But I agree with you, starting with D. Let's see what happens after D. E, F, and G. Yes, and H. So if A, B, and C were potentially gone, then we would have no more subdivisions new. But we would still have in place all the stuff that's necessary for regulation.
I would be interested in seeing it as two separate. Moratorium is one thing.
Right, I see it.
And we work on it, but I understand. I'm not blind to the fact that this has a start date that can be applied backwards if an ordinance was built off of this in the future. If we continue to keep this one in, then it could backdate and knock people out of the game that have already started the process. That's my concern with keeping this from going.
Could you end up just passing this with an effective date that this and an application provision that provides this as effective for any new effective on this date, and the application is to all new application of subdivision.
I think you can, because it's on the thing that I had for code compliance officer, I had an effective date way in the future because that was going to give us time to look for someone.
So you're really retaining this provision for all existing, but from this date forward, all new applications are not accepted, and these provisions don't apply to any new subdivisions after this date.
I get what you're coming from.
I don't know if that's a good wording, but
I'm still the same along with Leroy. I think the moratorium is something we ought to maybe just do as a council. And I'm sure, I don't know, I'm sure there's a way. You did it with the water thing. I'm sure there's a way to consider this to be an urgent matter to put the moratorium on new bills. But then give it back to the commission and let them do their job. They're appointed to do this job, whether you want to send them back or let them continue working on what they have for the next 6 months to create something that actually. Because this, I'm sorry, you all know I've written a lot of ordinances. It was used against me in the last campaign. We've written hundreds of ordinances. We make one change in a paragraph and it goes to referendum. And now you're talking eliminating the entire chapter. I think that's just too much. And we should be trying to take that on as a council. I think that should be the commission's job. This feels to me like a shotgun move to establish a start date. I just think it needs to go away and we need to let the commission do their job and give it time.
And there's nothing that precludes the commission from bringing back, if you did that application after this date. So there's no processing none of these provisions after this date to new subdivisions. That does not preclude the commission from proceeding and developing whatever ordinances and recommending to us any changes. I mean, they still have that. They still have that ability, no matter what we do.
Okay, so since a moratorium can only be for 6 months, are you proposing then that we would set a date that the planning commission has to have something to us by this certain date?
Could do that. You could work with them directly. I mean, I know we've only done it really general plan and a couple other times, I think, in my time here, but there's no reason we couldn't convey or that you couldn't convene a meeting of the commission and the council to really hash it out and then send them back with their marching orders with a time stamp on, say we need it back by this time.
And then is that where you would want to maybe have included the stuff that,
I'll communicate with, I'll send them to Cameron and those guys to add to the,
but I mean,
yeah.
yeah, as part of this?
Yes, as
Okay.
part of this, 'cause I feel
Okay.
like if we're just deleting it, that we should, at least we should cap it instead of just deleting it.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that would be part of this same.
I'll give it to Cameron and let him know what I was thinking there,
Okay,
and then see if it all works together.
okay. What's your thoughts, Paul? Good?
Most of their fees, right?
Yeah. I think so. I was just making sure there were no last minute comments. Okay. Next. Oh, I have these out of order. Next on the agenda has to do with the Casita guest house or accessory dwelling unit. I know I printed that off and put it in everyone's folders, but what I have here, the next thing is accessory building type. So where did it go?
While you're looking.
Oh, there it is. It's the third one now. Yes.
I was gonna ask for April or for Jean or for both of you to run you through a step by step as somebody that wants a resident, that has an existing house and now wants to create a residential hosting from the permit stage. What do they do?
They go in and they file an application for residential hosting permit with,
And so what happens after that is filed?
what do you do, Crystal?
I have to mail out letters to the surrounding neighbors. Letting them know that a residential hosting has been filed within the town. I give it 2 weeks and see if anybody back with anything. If I get lots of complaints, I tell them that they need to, it's to go in front of the town council. Just like we did with the one, Hensley, where we received all the complaints. Said, well, we received a lot,
Let's go to council.
consider moving in front of the council.
But it also needs to have, and I don't know if it necessarily has in the past, but it needs to have a dichotomous journey. It needs to be coming to me as well, because one of our regulations in here is if you're going to add to your existing facility larger than what it was designed for, the sewer needs to be reviewed to see if it can handle the extra. You have to make sure they're not going to put an extra water connection or an extra power connection, even for residential hosts. So I think that needs to happen simultaneously. They can come in and request a permit, but those things have to be done.
So is that being done now?
I guess, I mean, as I get them, that's what I do with them.
And do you,
I don't answer the phones on everything. So
Yeah.
it's got to be a communication between me and them.
Yeah,
But I believe we've got everything.
so if it comes to you, are you reviewing the application based on the application, or are you doing the site inspection to make sure that there's not an increase in the number of bedrooms that affect the sewer system?
So I have nothing to do with the application. I have nothing. to
So
do with the
recently,
application.
there hasn't really been new ones come in, and the new ones that have came in are stuff that he's already inspected because they built a brand new casita.
Okay, and then those,
So as far as new coming in,
Yeah.
it's been ones that have been like casitas or things like that.
There's,
I have, I believe it's 17 RHS for the town. We know there's way more, but I only have 17, and I know out of those 17, 2 are short-term rental homes. One or two even live there.
You're saying these are the only ones you have a business license for. When you say 17, you mean the ones that have a business?
Yes.
license? Okay, because we have a lot that are operating with no business license. Illegal operations.
which is.
And I only
Which is
have
a problem.
2 actual short-term rental business licenses for our whole town. We all know there's more, but I only have 2.
so to follow up with the legal ones, we don't know if in the process that's because it hasn't been reviewed, so we don't know if there's a sewage problem.
You're right.
So we're losing money based on a business license. We don't know if they need extra, is there a review for extra parking?
So I think one of the best things, because I think there's so many variables here, one of the best things that would happen is for you to actually sit and talk with James Reed about the state law that protects them and what we can and can't do as a municipality.
Well, that part's in the statute, yeah.
Right, but I'm saying that's your pain, if you try to go and enforce it, but yeah, as soon as, I know, we have people that not probably are renting RVs and other things on their property as a short term. Yeah, that's a problem, there's not just sewer hookup and there's.
That comes back into what we're talking before.
You send a diagram of their house, like if they haven't seen it, they're gonna show me a quick diagram, they show me where the parking would be for that residential thing. If they're renting out a room in their house, they do show that diagram. That isn't passed with their.
Then that, yeah, because the criteria would be based upon the sewer would be if they reviewed the house for a five-person family, and now you have people in the sewer would be.
It's all based on if you increase the volumes in the house, if you address the property. So then, yeah, all that stuff goes in, and also, I mean, one of the things I look at very closely is make sure that they're not adding connections, power or other things, because that makes it where they can actually carve off that unit that's.
Right.
So that's in the ordinances, that's the criteria that I follow to make sure that they understand you cannot separate these things from your primary dwelling, as well as all the fire safety and everything else that has to do with your sewer, all that stuff. So it's not that's the first thing I do. She collects the application packet and then we take it down to the inspector. That's the same process of building. If it's external, if it's internal, slightly different, depending on whether or not they're adding rooms or maintaining. Like if it's a grandmother raised a bunch of kids and the kids are gone and now they have a rented room, that falls under different.
Yeah,
So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
yeah, I just wanted to know the process.
There are a lot of potential, there's not a lot of potential, there's a lot of problems with the way it's set up, but it's not really on our end as much as it is how to enforce it based on the limitations the states put on municipality with this. Specifically short-term.
Yeah, and then, and there, because,
You mean residential hosting of a bedroom or something, yeah, I understand,
and
that's a
they,
little different than short-term.
and they're planning to address that in this legislative session.
I knew it was too open, so.
Too many municipalities have been complaining, and this went off.
It might be better.
Must need new batteries, why would it go out? It's on. Okay. Anyway, I was just gonna say, there's been so many complaints to the state legislators from municipalities that they have to address it.
Which one do you want?
We are about to start on E. No, I'm sorry, D. Yeah, I didn't go in there. We're about to start on D, and I actually had that out of order in the pages I put in your, did you find it?
Yes.
Okay,
Here's the status.
yeah.
This answers a lot of your questions if you're as. Good ask them to do.
Yeah, yeah. Order to go down. I got some amendments when we get to the.
Thank you. You're trying to do this, believe me, now.
Slow down. Is it working?
Just down.
Alright. We better use some more pepper in that, because we,
So are we doing the casita now?
Yes. Yeah, I'm reading it, looking closely at the proposed changes.
Cameron's here and this would be worth having him speak to it.
Okay, hold on. I want to finish reading it first.
I think it can speak for itself. Yeah, you'd like that. Of course, if you do this, then you can like call it the CETA.
No, it's gonna be an internal accessory dwelling unit. There is, okay, I'll make a note here that I have a question, just 1 second. When we come to it.
Okay, if a casita,
Are you talking to me, Jean, or that Jean?
that
Which Jean?
Gene G.
Not Mayor Gene.
If a casita, if a person has a 5-bedroom house. And so it's passed the codes for the sewer or the septic tank and the power. And they just decide to turn one of those bedrooms into something that they'll rent. Do they still have to go through to have all that checked?
No, it would be an internal, that'd be an internal casita. If they start,
Now, if they have an outside one, I can understand that, if they add.
it depends on whether they start adding, like if they take that section of their house, their old playroom, and then split it and turn it into 2 bedrooms, then yeah, they gotta go through the process. Because you're adding additional, that's what the sewer, the health department looks at is number of bedrooms.
But if they're not adding anything.
Now, if it's not gonna increase what the house is designed for, then no.
I know that when I first went to college, I rented just a bedroom. In this house. And
Yeah. And that would, if it was designed as a bedroom, that's when they start making alterations that would increase sewer usage, is the first thing that triggers.
Yeah, and I believe, I'm gonna look this up real quick, but I believe that if you had, let's say, how you were saying, a 2-bedroom house. And you took that second, the one of the, 5-bedroom house, if you took one of those 5 bedrooms. And started renting it out, I don't think that qualifies as being considered,
An ADU.
an ADU, because that would just be a bedroom that you're renting out. I've done that too in the past.
An ADU would have other
A
facilities.
dwelling
But
unit.
those people still need to get a permit.
That's correct.
Yes,
And a tax ID.
Well, the tax ID thing's tricky too, because if you're a sole proprietor, you're not required by the state to have an EIN and all that stuff, so. You could just use your social.
and if you're renting it long-term, I don't know that you necessarily have to have a business license. What would, did you guys ever deal with that when you were working town hall?
I don't think we ever charged it if it was within the dwelling. I mean, it's a separate long-term rental, yes, but if it's within the dwelling,
Okay.
but if it's an RV chapter, we do this.
Right.
But I also think, just for your general knowledge, Leroy, that also it's not just altering the house and the construction of rooms. If you decide you're gonna put in a second laundry facility, that also affects your sewer. So there's a number of things that will trigger having to go to the septic or to the sewer, the health department to get your approval from them saying, yeah, your design is gonna add this much to your sewer, but it can handle it or no. So
Yeah.
if they just add a room and a kitchen, little kitchenette or something, that would qualify as an ADU, but if they add laundry facilities or they add extra bedrooms, then it triggers it to have to go through other
Or,
cars.
or an extra bathroom to shower and everything.
Yeah, more than one society.
So yeah, a dwelling unit has to have a kitchen and bathroom. So just renting out a bedroom is not a dwelling unit. But anyway. Okay, so. I have a couple of questions. On this.
I know you're looking for the questions, but can we
Or-
get copies of this before we have a work meeting?
Yes. These were, I believe these were actually in our folders for December. I think this was on the December agenda and we didn't get to it. It was probably in the folder for December, but yes, we can do that from now on.
Thank you.
So in the proposed, so I'm reading the current wording, 16.22 for a casita / guest house, see what it currently says.
References to the page.
Page 2 in the proposed wording. F2. E. Internal accessory dwelling unit. If the ADU is within the footprint of the primary dwelling or within the garage, the following requirements must be met. And it's number 1 that I had a question on, because it says, must be of compatible architectural style, including siding and roofing, and shall be made structurally a part of the primary building. But if it's within the footprint of the primary dwelling, why is there any siding or roofing and need to be a compatible architectural style if it's already within the footprint of the building? That's I just wondered if this just needs to be deleted or does it need to stay?
I can give you an example, like even on, so I'm in the 101, it was designed and built originally as 4 separate buildings. So they're attached and they are all different architectural styles, just because that's the way it was designed. I think you're doing this to where you don't take your, like if you put your ADU into your garage, that you don't change up your garage to make it look like a little apartment separate from your main dwelling. That you keep the you keep the design for the neighborhood stays, the house is the house. I think that's the reason, I don't know, maybe Cameron can speak to it. I think that's.
I just wonder if this is something that was left over from the casita thing and it just stayed.
That was transferred from the original language to the proposed wording? Or that was only in the original language?
It's in the original language. And then, when it talks about the ADU, what it did say in the original language, it said, if the casita is attached to the primary dwelling, and then it said, must be of a compatible architectural style and must not be more than 50% of the primary dwelling's total area. And now we've changed it to say internal ADU, not attached, because see, it says internal, and that it is within the footprint of the primary dwelling. And that's why I wondered, what are we talking about with the compatible architectural style if it's inside the building? And I'm just thinking,
Which left over on that?
that's what so I just wondered if it needed to be there or not, but I guess we could just leave it there, given what you
Be up to
said.
you guys.
But I've walked through, for example, in my neighborhood, there was a house that was under construction and I was walking through it while it was being built. And they did an internal accessory dwelling unit. And it was, what they did was really cute, very cool. But, there was the kitchen, the laundry, the bathroom, the whole thing could just be, shut the doors and we've got another, unit, and it was very nicely done,
Was it internal?
internal.
Did it look like the rest of the house?
Yep.
They did it. I think that's.
You
kind of
couldn't
what-
even tell, you would, looking at the house, you would have no clue.
Well, I see.
I
what
don't care one way or the other.
Well, I see what the mirror is saying, because one E or two E is what you're referring to, right?
Yes,
Yeah, and two E used to be an attached casita, and with the attached casita, then they wanted that compatibility and they wanted that 50%. Well, what's done here is it says internal accessory dwelling unit, then it goes on and only talks about an ADU, it doesn't talk about an IADU. So we're mixing terms there. So really what you do is to just delete that internal accessory dwelling unit, IADU, and then the provision makes sense.
well, you need to, no,
You gotta
you
adjust
need to
the
have an internal
What's that?
accessory dwelling.
Have to address garages, I mean, they may change the entire garage, it just depends on what we're going.
Just, if you just delete the title.
That's actually.
We need to have it, we need to have it called internal.
Right. They're not referred to as casita, as the entry.
And the state code talks about internal and
But
external.
that paragraph is talking about an ADU, it's not talking about an internal ADU.
It's talking about one that was attached to the house, which we don't,
They're talking about if the ADU is attached.
yes,
It's not talking about an internal ADU.
okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
So
so,
almost need another section, one for IADU.
Yes.
one for EDU. one
Yeah.
for external.
that I would agree.
You following?
Cameron? You follow what we were
Got
saying?
none of that.
So
No,
attached-
you were off doing something else.
I
You
got it.
shopping,
I got
you
it.
shopping online.
Enough of Amazon.
I got it. No, I got it. You want a separate one for one attached to the garage?
That would make sense.
I think you need to do one that says within this footprint, and one that says I'm adding on to the house. Becomes an ADU that's an attached ADU, and then one that's an external ADU.
And if it's attached,
If it's attached, it becomes part of your.
it becomes part of
It's
the
not-
primary dwelling unit.
It's not part of the original, or not part of the original unit. But
Well,
I see where you're coming from, or I think I see where you're coming
So can I get some clarification? Okay, so if it's not part of the original footprint and it is being attached to the dwelling, then we would it would not be, we would be allowed to regulate that because it would not be considered an internal,
Right,
because it was being added to.
right. And I think the intent of,
I'm thinking,
Okay.
Paul
The
says
intent-
yes, the rest of it
the
doesn't.
intent of two E appears to be talking about an ADU within the footprint of a primary dwelling unit.
Right, right.
Not talking about IADU.
An IADU is
Is what-
internal, it's in the house.
So then there probably just needs an I before ADU under that. If the
Oh, I see what
IADU
you're
is
saying.
within the footprint. You're mixing two from, and I can't figure out which
from.
term.
No, I see what you're saying, you're looking at.
I'm not sure.
I think it would also be wise to say, if the IADU is within the footprint or attached to the primary dwelling, so you're covering both bases.
Because then the primary dwelling unit becomes bigger and it is.
This almost makes it sound like you can't have an IADU unless it's within the footprint.
That's what it sounds like.
Their house, they should be able to, well, they can do that, so you'd have to.
Well, I think you guys made it simple, think about it.
Make it
Still
so.
You guys made it simple.
Okay.
And the change simple.
We can do that on an amendment.
I think you guys could do that.
Do that ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Hey, who did that? Is that you? That was you?
We didn't think this was gonna be an easy meeting, did you?
Wow, that's great.
We still got hours to go.
No, you only got 50.
We only have- We only have. He's got.
1 minute. You should have a clock up there going off.
Okay,
Leave the sergeant bar.
okay, so next was the height and setback regulations.
And Mayor, can I suggest we kind of look at these two together?
The E and F,
No, the next one that you're looking at, are you onto that yet?
we're just moving to E, which was height and setback
Right, I think
regulations.
it kind of needs to go, because this is with accessory dwelling units. The only reason to put that at 25 feet is if they're doing an internal dwelling, internal, and
That's the wrong one, yeah. Don't get those mixed up, the height one. Accessory dwelling unit height is different than the height and setbacks. You guys made the same mistake.
Yeah, this is the one.
sorry,
I'm sorry.
And then the next one is the accessory building, just call one accessory.
Oh,
building
accessory.
and one setback.
my mistake, move on. Yeah, okay.
Was that
We're
the
talking
25?
about height and setback.
Oh, I have plenty of mistakes. I don't know.
I thought it was.
What's the saying? I thought I screwed up, and that's why I was mistaken. So you're moving on to number E on the word union? Or do you have more goal with this? Let's see that.
Oh, you know what I have here? I actually am looking at. I got D, E, and F when I put them in our, when I put them in the folder, I got them out of the order, put them in reverse order. So E
So we're on
says
E.
height and setback regulations. This is this one that says it was prepared September 2nd, 2022.
This one just has the preparer as Jean Ryan, it's not a family.
Correct.
And it says height and setback.
This one should be. straight.
Okay, this one, I see that you guys were, this says you're removing the term RZ and RD from the wording, because we no longer have a resort zone, and I don't even know what RD was. Any idea what that is?
What was it? Do you remember what RD was?
It's not, I don't think it was the typo.
Could be, because I don't know that we've ever had a zone that was those initials, ever.
They might have been resort district.
Could have been.
Didn't we have it as district at one point?
Maybe
We changed it.
You changed it from district to something else?
It was all.
No, we
from
didn't,
district to
but
zone.
we found district within the.
Yeah.
This was just meant.
So it's how it's,
Okay, hold on a minute, I just need to respond to this text message.
We need to do what we do to scouts, not take them on a camping trip. We lock all those in the
A
car.
car, okay, well, this was something, a message somebody wrote that had to do with something for tonight.
I want to email her.
Did George say no?
Leroy's been in the courtroom, the judge would take it away from you. The cop is pretty.
I don't see how you can, you're not on the email.
Because she emailed it to you.
Yeah.
And Monica texted me and I said, she emailed it to me already, I've already responded.
Got it,
You're
okay.
know.
All right, fine.
we gotta keep our phones.
Fine.
Lisa Freak Presley's dead. I mean,
Oh.
it's important stuff, so.
Oh, did she die?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so. Is that, were these the only changes then, was this removal of RZ and RD?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, then I don't see that there's, much to talk about. What do you think, Paul? Anything on this one about height and setback, Misty? Nope.
Not at this time, no.
Leroy?
No,
Okay, Jean,
that's fine.
no, you would prepare it anyway. Okay, I don't see any issues with that. Okay, so then the next one is the accessory building, height of accessory buildings. Any discussion?
What's the purpose?
Yeah,
Yeah, because you said it's removing irrelevant material, but yet you're changing a height, where the ordinance is changing a height from 20 feet to 25 feet. I
The
understand. the
irrelevant
one
material
story.
is the one story.
Well, you're changing the height to 25 feet.
so that's relevant.
That is relevant,
Yeah,
but you're right, okay, can't argue that. I think it's been a pretty long time since we did this. I think the reason that we did this is because an accessory building could be used as an external ADU. right? Which then has the same height as your regular structure, but a barn, anything else, it's. Yeah, I don't see a purpose in keeping it 20 feet of here. but
Well,
discuss.
I can see it, I can see it, yes.
I believe that's a typo, because if I recall correctly, the discussion was had to lift the height to 25 feet. However, the final recommendation was to maintain the 20 feet.
Yes, I thought that's what it was.
I don't know.
That was the final recommendation.
so we can remove that and
So we don't even.
have it for our next meeting.
I don't think that needs to go back, we just maintain that portion, right?
Just delete the 25 feet, leave the 25 feet as 20 feet is what.
But it also, but,
The ones,
If we change.
but this is one story. And so if the recommendation of the council, of the planning commission is 20, we still have to vote on
We
this.
still have to.
We still have to vote.
Because of that one little section, or that, not the little section, but removing one story, but that wording of 25 feet needs to come out. It's just saying 20 feet.
that's what you guys rewrote it as, I want to make sure. I understand.
That was the recommendation.
That's just the recommendation.
So it was written as 25 feet, but the commission recommended to us to pass it as 20 feet.
Correct, but the ordinance as written still has 25.
Right, it is.
And so the ordinance, we still have to vote on it, even if we say we
Right, you
say,
just have to edit that,
We'll
right?
just have to amend it.
yes,
Yeah,
okay.
that's what I was saying.
okay.
If that's what we want,
That's what.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
okay, I was gonna say,
I'm not gonna-
how long are we gonna be here arguing on that? Okay.
It's a recommendation, I want to recognize what we can, our commissions.
Okay, I did not print off this section G because I didn't even think we would get this far. I seriously thought we were not gonna get to G. So I don't think I printed off for us to look at it.
You know, when we had all the polls just caught up, so, you know. Dean did a great job of catching everything up by the end of the year, so now I can see what the effects are. So my suggestion is, why don't we take L through M at next month's work session, and then look at the rest of it the following work session, and then pass the ordinance thereafter.
If we can go through it that fast, but
We might,
Yeah.
well, if we don't, then we can readjust, but that gives us a goal to do half next work session, half the following work session. And then we pass it if we meet that timeline. And I think we're pushing planning and zoning to do that for us. We need to start doing that for them. But that's a lot to tackle. All those definitions are a lot to
That's a
tackle,
lot.
but let's at least make a goal to do half by next work session. And then half the next, and then we can readjust it from there. That's my suggestion.
I have no objection to that.
I agree. It's a lot.
Okay, so we have H, I, and J on the agenda. I'm shocked we got this far. H, I, and J are next. Do we want to work on this or do we want to?
Propose that we wait on H.
Okay,
I've got a meeting with the attorney to talk about some of these problems in our ordinances with definitions that have to do with lodging. We have a ton of stuff that it goes against itself. And I'd like to take this document along with the stuff that's in there and sit down and get back and get some guidance on how to correct that.
I have no problem with that.
that is H.
That's H.
Okay,
And that's an ordinance that I pretty much penned, so I just like, before we go move this into ordinance, I really like to get it lined out, cleaned up.
you have an appointment already set?
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
Okay, so number I. Letter I, sorry, not number I believe you guys just passed this, a major recommendation, whether to approve or deny at December's meeting, right? This next one we're talking about,
I just have the agenda in front of me, sorry.
okay,
Which one is it?
this has to do with,
Conditional uses.
well, yeah, but it's talking about the short-term rental being 5 bedrooms, no more than 5 bedrooms.
Correct.
That was December's meeting where you guys
Yes, ma'am.
voted on that, okay.
Did you guys vote to approve?
Yes.
Was it discussed? They have a number of 10, or what was the discussion? Sorry, I was out of town that day, so.
Okay, so this. All right, so this ordinance was drafted primarily because concerns expressed by the public with the definitions of the separate lodging units, specifically short-term rentals, how are we defining them, right? And so the concern was that the way it was defined, structures that were undesirable or large buildings could be built in residential areas with the definition of short-term rental how we had it. So rather than change the definition of short-term rental, what we did was we went to the specific zones that were of concern, and we placed additional restrictions to short-term rentals in them. So there was discussion about the fire department's rule of 10 persons. That was not the primary driver of. Though it was a part of the discussion, was not a primary reason that this was written.
Is I do have concerns with this, and it doesn't have anything to do with, I don't care if we want to do it to 5 or not. The concern I have is the way that this is written, it suggests that if somebody built a 6-bedroom house, that they would not be able to use it as short-term rental. So we start regulating the interior structure of the house rather than the use. You see where I'm coming from? So if a person builds a bigger house, but then they're limited by the town ordinance to say you can only rent up to 5 units. We should be excluding a home because it was built with outside of this 5-bedroom.
Is that definition applicable to short-term rental, or applicable to residential hosting facilities?
So the definition was for short-term rentals.
And we don't allow short-term rentals except in a subdivision.
Correct, but these homes in these short-term rental subdivisions may never be a short-term rental. If they want to build a large home to live in, and then later have that option, I don't think we should be saying.
They were not homes. Well, we're not. I mean, they can build that home that way. They just could not do it as a short-term rental, but they could probably do it as a residential hosting under our current ordinance.
I'd have a problem with that, because then you're regulating the bill.
No, we're just saying you can't have short-term rental. We do that already. We're saying you're not having short-term rental In towns, that's a dollar regulation, but you can build what
You
you
understand
want.
what I'm saying, you know, with 5 acre subdivision, it does have that short-term rental overlay. We're now saying you can only build a 5 bedroom house.
No,
That's the way it's written.
That's,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
that's
but
what
I don't
it's-
think-
I didn't read it. That's what I'm asking.
so let me,
I'm just saying, we need to specify use versus.
Okay.
I want to build your. home.
so if you look at the sections where those are written in, you will see that for chapter 32, chapter 34, which are our residential and rural residential, short-term rentals is listed in those zones as permitted. Provided that, one, they have a short-term rental overlay on their parcel. Okay, so we are not regulating short-term rental subdivisions unless they were a planned development that were all going to be short-term rentals. We are limiting the use of short-term rental within that zone further.
Okay, but I would want to see that clarified in here, because I can see how that could quickly be used as a cudgel on the actual building of the property.
Well, it says in new subdivisions only.
Correct, so that section is, so if you go to the chapter, that section is
That's the residential code.
permitted use,
Mhm.
short-term rental, and then what already exists there is, it's permitted, but it's only permitted in a short-term rental overlay. So we are not limiting short-term rental overlays. We are only limiting the use of short-term rental within that zone.
I just would want it clear. I mean, I would want to have that clarified. You understand what he's saying? Like, I think.
I want to see the language, but I understand what he's saying.
I think it would need to be something simple like short-term rental properties may not exceed the rental of more than 5 bedrooms.
I mean,
Do you see what I'm saying?
I'm not gonna argue with you, I think it's tomato, but if you like that wording better, go with that.
I just don't want somebody saying you can't build your home this way.
Here's the one problem I have.
Nails it down, it takes away.
We can just amend it if it comes to force.
Well, I
Put that here.
Yeah,
I'll say the one thing that I have thought is a problem, even with, before this change, even with what the current code says, is for the rural residential zone, it says, and the residential zone, this is in both residential and rural residential. Where it says permitted use short-term rental, it says in new subdivisions only permit required. It should say in new subdivisions with short-term rental overlay only. Because that implies that the way this is written, anyone can come in with a new subdivision, say, hey, I'm in a new subdivision, I get this. Instead of new subdivisions with short-term rental overlay.
No argument for me. That makes sense.
Okay, so I think for clarification, why it was written that way, and I believe the lawyer wrote it that way, is because this was always seen before current day, which I'm talking about the last 5 months or whatever it's been. The short-term rental overlay was always considered a designation, not a zone change. And so I agree that you could change it to say that, but it could say short-term rental overlay zone or subdivision or whatever, and a short-term rental permit. Because just because it's in the short-term rental overlay zone, it still is required to have a short-term rental permit.
Correct.
And that's when you check those 5 bedrooms, when they go for their permit.
Okay, I was just concerned that somebody could have a new subdivision that's residential.
Yes.
And then somebody come in and say, wait, it doesn't say short-term rental overlay zone, it just says a new subdivision and, you know, I'm in a new subdivision. And so I think it needs to be real clear
That's not what we're gonna do.
here. Okay.
That's
With
it.
short-term rental permit required.
Yeah, I need to see the language, but that's fine.
Yeah, I know.
I kind of understood what's going on, but I haven't looked at the language yet.
So it also
But
might be,
it sounds all
it might be more clear when you see the other restrictions too, like no cannabis, no temporary buildings, no whatever, right?
So, Mayor, could we send this back with information? I
Sure.
mean, we can't do it tonight, but
No, but we can.
I'd suggest we send it back with what you're saying, something to talk about what I'm saying, but I'd also like to see a deal in there that says, and I asked the building inspector. We should probably come up with something that says, for every X number of bedrooms, there is on-site parking for that number of vehicles. It's just part of
Yes.
the requirement, where you have on-site parking, if you're going up to 5 bedrooms, you have to have an X number of parking spaces on site, for not clogging the town streets. I think that would make a lot of people happy. Well, because nobody's ever happy.
Well, that's consistent with the motion I made for Zion and
Yes, about the parking.
Yeah.
And even observation states that open to that, so I think we'll put that,
Okay.
that's my idea.
So at the town council meeting on Tuesday, I'll have this on there for us to vote that we'll send it back.
Okay, we'll bring my notes
And that motion include your recommendations on areas of improvement.
Sure.
we should.
and explain, sorry, what's that?
Okay, so the
He wants
last,
an explanation, so when he gets back, he can explain it to the rest of the commission.
Probably written by someone other than.
He's young. We're doing this stuff, this should be good.
okay, so the,
That's right, Ron wants here to take notes.
okay, so the last thing, on the agenda, I am not quite speechless. I've only been ever made speechless once that I could think of in recent years.
Is that when Niall said, yeah?
I was not the one to propose.
That's when Niles was speechless.
I couldn't resist that.
No, that was good. That was good.
No, there was one time where I was made speechless and a person laughed. They were like, "You're speechless." I was absolutely floored, didn't know what to say. This is a few years ago. So I'm speechless that we are at this last one.
They moved quick.
Yeah, okay, so this is from our prosecutor. And he had suggested because of a problem they had where there was someone with running animals at large and they could not prosecute, they had to drop the case. He has this proposed code.
Do we know what animals they were?
Yes, because if you look at the subject, do you have the letter there?
Yes, I do.
See the subject? We don't want to say the name because this is where Jean was concerned that we don't make this.
Oh, okay, now I got it.
Okay,
Now I got
okay,
it. Yeah.
okay. So he has a proposed code, his idea of a proposed code for Virgin. And then he said, by the way, here's the county code. And Jean and I talked about this the other day when we had one of our meetings. And the animals running at large in the proposed code for Virgin, he has the word dog. And in the county code, they do not include dog. Otherwise, they both have cattle, horses, mules, sheep, goats, or swine. And so here's the proposed code. I'll read it out loud to everyone. It is unlawful for the owner of any dog, cattle, horses, mules, sheep, goats, or swine to allow the same to run at large upon the public roads and highways within the city limits of Virgin. The owner or person charged with responsibility for an animal found running at large shall be strictly liable for a violation of this section, regardless of the precautions taken to prevent the escape of the animal, and regardless of whether or not such owner or person knows that the animal is running at large. A violation of this section is a Class B misdemeanor. And Jean and I were talking about this. I said, well, my issue has to do with the dog. we have a gate in our courtyard and we have our dog in the front courtyard. And it still blows my mind, but sometimes people come to my house for something and they walk out and leave the gate standing open. And the next thing I know, I hear a bark, 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 bark as a car's driving by and I'm going, "Oh, my dog is out." And I go running and there's my gate standing open and I know who it was and they left the gate open. I'm like, I would never go to someone's house and leave the gate standing open if it was closed when I got there. I would close the gate behind me, but it happens. And under this, I would be strictly liable for this dog getting loose when it wasn't me.
But
It's a two-edged sword.
there's so many dogs running loose in this neighborhood and they're not all were bad dogs. I mean, mine gets out too, but they're killing chickens
No.
and they're harassing livestock and children and fighting gentlemen on motorcycles
And
and
there,
bicycles and things like that. And that's where
Okay.
it comes into play. It's not necessarily the person that whoops and their puppy got out,
Yeah,
but
Okay.
more the ones that
like
are
this.
dogs because they're harassing. It's not the ones that are,
Okay,
but
well,
you
it was,
have to
it was
include
the,
dogs or you exclude them.
Do you see-
I guess it was the strict liability.
You see the issue? I mean, I live up on this other end of town where everybody's dogs are running.
Right.
And that's just accepted, and everybody's okay with it. If they're not, they shoot the dog, so. Just joking. The dogs weren't on the time. Animals are worse for very long. No, but what I'm saying is.
No, that's goats, they live.
So let's say the mayor's dog gets out, you gotta hold, this is the problem with enforcement, is you gotta write it where it holds accountability, but it has a little bit of wiggle room, because if her dog gets out, she shouldn't suddenly have an enforcement officer at her door because it jumped out the gate and was right. in the street, right.
Without it there, without the teeth, how do we take care of the ones that are?
I'm not arguing, I'm just saying.
I don't know.
You've got to find a middle ground because you've got animals that are out that are causing problems.
Excellent.
And the animals that are out and it's because mom opened the gate at 3 o'clock in the morning and they took off.
and
It
then,
happened. My dog took off for 2 hours and I couldn't find
The
her.
dog's just the beginning, I mean.
You know, but if you guys brought it back, that's my next.
I mean, I don't know if anybody got killed in that accident, I think there were 2 horses up there,
Right.
all in the town, that were just.
So how
I
does,
saw some floods, but I mean, that could kill a person for a minute.
how do you soften it though? Because to me, if you can say, you can't say domestic because people keep cows as pets. I mean, look how sweet everybody is with their 4-H cows. Horses are, my horses, when we had them, were like our pets. They weren't just our work horses, they were our pets. So you can't say domestic.
My,
Just limit out that. You have to still include dogs, animals, horses, sheep. So
this would be my suggestion when it comes to the animals. Take dogs, which is the only thing that in here that's different, and then look at our ordinance for domestic livestock. It covers cattle, sheep, goats, turkeys, swine, equines, which covers all manner of horse, type, mules, whatever. Humility, that was the word I was.
That's the word you wanted?
Lions, birds, which because ostriches up here, ratites, bison, elk, and any other domesticated non-human vertebrate creature, domestic fur bearer, or domestic.
What,
poultry, raised
where,
pet,
what,
or used
what, what section is that?
Section 212, animals, domestic farm or livestock.
did we pull that right from the county
We pulled that from the state.
or state website, the state?
Code 79 or 76-9-30I, 3301.
Where does it address the one we're all talking about? Where does it address dogs?
It does not, what we're talking about, this is a proposed code from our prosecutor. He said, he suggested we put this in our code.
You're talking about the
This
neighbor.
proposed says dog. Right?
Yes, his proposal has the word
And
dog.
Jean's saying leave dog out.
No, I'm saying add dog to what we have in,
Oh.
which you really don't have to because it says any other domesticated fur bearer, domestic poultry,
So basically,
domesticated non-human vertebrate creature. It kind of, it's a big place.
so basically, we would pass an ordinance that adds this. And then amend the definition for domestic animals to include the word dog.
I do the opposite. I would take what we have in, because this is state code here.
Mhm.
In section 2, use that as your description of your animals.
Oh, I see.
Because it's way more, it covers a lot more.
A lot more animals, okay.
Where's Pat in this? Because you got an attack.
I got an attack.
I have several cats, but they don't tell me how to leave the system.
So,
There's several cats running within their.
yeah, I think it's, I see these number of problems with this, because I had an incident where a dog got out, and the dog was recently from a pound, got out and was a vicious dog, attacked my dog, sent me to the ground, and I ended up having to go to instant care. You have a situation like that. What this prevents, as his suggestion, is really kind of adds a leash law on that, and because now that would mean you can run with your dogs even if they're under voice control. So I think this needs some more. And I think you need to treat dogs maybe separately from the general other animals. And maybe you create a graduated fine where the second offense is going to be worse than the first offense for dogs. So there's different ways you can deal with that. I hate to volunteer again, but if he doesn't mind, maybe I'll be glad to do something, bring it to a work session. But it may be about 2 months, I want to do some research.
This
see
is,
what the
this
current
is not a
stuff.
rush.
I didn't think it was a rush, but.
No, it was just a suggestion because
Because
of
I've
the fact.
drafted dog ordinances before,
I like that.
and it's really tough to do, to get everybody happy, so let me look at some prior ones and.
That takes care of the.
Yes, the thing we're not.
And the sweet dog that runs in the neighborhood, really doesn't hurt anybody, but he just roams. the-
We keep our dogs on a leash, we do everything, they could. And so you don't want to.
I'll second your motion.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll volunteer for that and create, sometimes doing the enforcement anyway. Let me do this one.
The little teeth, because there are issues with,
You-
like, not just dogs, but. Not just livestock, but dogs in general, like the wild cats, there are a few wild cats running through.
The minute you give one dog and another dog, that becomes a pack and it becomes dangerous. And if you have a dog that's under voice control, that's been trained, that's all right. Then you've got Sarah up there, let their dogs run up and down the street. Some people want that in our neighborhood. I'd be happy with the leash law, but,
I thought we had.
but we deleted it. That's along the way. And we deleted registration of dogs. We don't have any animal ordinance anymore.
We can add on the municipal code, it's not in the land use code. It's in the municipal code, I think the lease law is there.
No, it's not. Well, it's not on the one online. Let's put it that way.
Okay, but it should be there, because I've seen it. That's it.
I'll have to go into the office because
Yeah.
that goes back to, we needed to make sure the municipal code fits online.
Because I've seen it, I've been municipal code on it.
When I first moved here, I looked it up, so I knew exactly what my limitations
Right.
were with 2 dogs.
Yeah.
I registered them down at town hall, probably with you, Missy.
Yeah, it's in that blue, it's in the blue book.
Okay,
It was in there that Darcy was working on to, that she does both. It's in the municipal code.
okay.
It's one of those tough deals to me because anytime there's something that comes about with compliance attached, not just because of this job, but just in any management of any kind, you want to have everything black and white, but there's too many gray areas and it requires somebody that's gonna look at each case by case. I think about all these cattle owners. Every now and then cows get through the fence. I don't care how well you fence, a cow, horse, basically can get out. And so you have somebody sweet like Halloween that gets a cow out. Neighbors call him and he comes and gets it. Should he be cited and given a class B misdemeanor because his cow got out? That's where I think we.
Because there are people who horses get out, the people who kept them in my property, their horses have gotten out, and everybody just kind of calls and says, hey, will you call so-and-so, the horses are out.
You know, for the first offense, I mean, you need something. And you need to make sure that the owners are being responsible. So maybe the first offense is a fine, the second offense is greater. And then
I
the third.
suggest also talking to to Laverkin and to Herkin with their pet thing. The first time they get your dog in the pound, you get it back. Second time they start charging. But I'd be very cautious with fines.
Warnings are always great, because it could be the simple cow or the simple mules that get out and we chase them and they're fine, they're not causing any problem, they're just out, we don't want them to get hurt.
We get
You
the
know.
scouts, tells our neighborhood all the time.
You know, it's just that simple warning.
But it's never a problem until a stout cow or a Ruggles horse or
Does some damage.
steps out on the highway and kills
Well,
someone. Yeah, suddenly you're gonna go, oh, you get warnings, this cost my child's
See,
life.
Brett, there's dogs that belong to we don't know who that have killed multiple chickens and the chickens. Well, some of them have already. taken care of, But you have to have.
Can't discharge a weapon in the city.
You have to start warning.
Well, now, did we take that out of provision? It used to be, oh, no, I think there are some.
What is it, 600? I can't remember.
600 feet from a residence or something like that.
Safety of your family, remember?
600 feet from residence, I think it's 300 feet. from-
Or, yeah, unless you defend the property, yeah.
Or, you know, state limitation.
Marge,
Yeah, not necessarily.
Safety of your life.
Just talking all out, some cities base it on, injury, nuisance, or,
That's good.
wait,
Oh, that's right.
they base it on damage, injury, or nuisance.
and they also have, we used to have
I like that.
dangerous dog item and what constitutes a dangerous dog, and then by the third offense, the judge had permission to put it down. And those type of ordinances have been upheld, so there's so many variations.
We have to face the fact we are in a rural farming type of community
And-
where there's
yes.
every type of farming animal in our community.
Unfortunately, though, we have a 5 million people ask.
Passing.
Right, so we do have to do something, but we do need to make it, like you're saying, fair for the ones that it's a whoopsie and it's, you know, but even if it does become injury from a whoopsie, it still needs to be held responsible for.
And that's where the drafting comes
Right,
very difficult to do, and I know there are many citizens that still want to run their dogs off leash.
right.
And so long as they're there and under voice control, that's fine, and then the first time that dog bites somebody, then it becomes a good position.
Right.
Category, yeah.
Perfect, go Paul.
Look at
I
that.
think we just, whoever the enforcement officer needs to use common sense.
Well, and we have had this sheriff's department as the enforcement for animals.
They're good too. They were small. They know this because any dog that gets out on our invitation, always delivered to my house. And I call, if I can't find the owner, I call. So I've been telling you every year we do 5 or 6 animals that they come to your mom. They're good.
Yeah, you know, dogs get out and you just gotta. Gene, you get one bite and that's.
I get one bite,
The one
yeah.
bite, remember that in law school, one bite?
Oh, yeah, but for a biting dog, yes.
I think the only thing Gene's dog would bite would be a tire.
Car, that's it. Because that's really.
Good old.
Okay, so I guess we have covered everything, which I did not, I thought we would only get like halfway through.
What do you like?
Until we still have 10 minutes.
That's because we didn't have as much.
Can I move to adjourn?
You can move to
I
adjourn.
move to adjourn.
Okay, I second. All in favor? Okay.
Very nice.
I like work.